When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome to the Black Table, an hour devoted to exploring ideas and subjects of special importance to African people and to others, fighting to make and build a better world. I'm your regular host, Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. And today we are, as always, honored to have a guest. And this guest in particular, who is an incredibly humble spirit and brother and Baba, is, in many people's estimation, myself included, the kind of most important and prolific and representative thinker, writer, teacher of African descent that we have in the contemporary world. And that is none other than Baba Toyin Falola. He is he's impossible to summarize. I would encourage everyone at the onset to go to this website, toyinfalolanetwork.org. That's TOYINFALOLA network.org. And there you can see just a fraction of his prodigious output. In 2009, that year marked his 100th publication in terms of books, and that was 13 years ago. So there have been dozens of books since. He sits on the editorial board of dozens of journals. He is a teacher, a culture keeper, a witness, recorder, community resource, historian, poet, Omoluabi, and I'm sure I butchered that, but my good dear friend and brother, who is Babalawo at Howard University, Kola Abambola, who talks to our freshmen every year about Omoluabi, certainly would refer to this Baba as one. So I'm going to stop there because we could spend this entire time and 4 or 5 more Black tables talking about this brother and invite him into the conversation. Hello, Baba Falola, Professor Falola. It's so good to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm happy. And let me start this conversation off in the traditional format. Mm-hmm. First of all, paying homage to you because I'm in your space and territory. And I'm using the Babalawo's instrument. They call it a rocking, which gives blessing. A door can open inside and open outside. Wherever you want to open the door, it will open for you and it will unlock all the opportunities and give you those opportunities. If we come to this world, we pray for old age. May you all become elders. And as you become elders, may you become ancestors. Your wisdom, all of you, will multiply. It will multiply. And whatever you do, we always honor our ancestors. Thank you.
I feel. Oh, thank you for opening the way, Baba. In fact, one time I rushed from my class at Howard to get to the Library of Congress because you were there talking about among many other things, one of your books, The Humanities in Africa.
Yes.
And having watched you open that way there, I want to thank you for doing that for us and this morning as well. And I think about one of your countless number of comrades, brothers and sisters, colleagues, Shegun Badageshin.
Yes.
Of course, the dean at Howard. And I remember coming into his office when you had sent him a copy of Eshu.
Yes.
And I said, oh, he did another one. He said, yes, my brother. And so I rushed immediately to get it. So I'm hoping we can devote some time today to your journey. As I mentioned before we started recording, 2 of your books, of course, form the basis of some form of memoir. Of course, A Mouth Sweeter Than Salt and Counting the Tiger's Teeth. And I love the way that you characterize your upbringing and that formative moment in counting the tiger's teeth. And you say, I went through the archive, I read everything, but I was there. And so could you tell us a little bit, since we have the honor of being with you, a little bit about yourself and the context and communities out of which you come?
Thank you very much. And I'm very grateful to you and to the generation that gave birth to me. Today, there are two fundamentals that shape individuals in Western society. The concept of self-praise. In that concept of self-praise, they claim credit for all of their achievements. Fundamentally, it's not true. It can be exaggerated, as Trump exaggerated it, that his father only gave him 1 million. It turns out not to be true. It can be exaggerated, as Dell, the richest man in my city, exaggerated it, saying that he dropped out of my school after first year, hiding the story that his father was a multimillionaire. And it can be exaggerated, as Bill Gates has exaggerated it, forgetting to tell people that his father was also a multimillionaire. And that narrative, we have to, as we build communities, begin to tell people, you cannot make it without others.
Yes.
We reflect upon one another as a community. If you grew up in a religious community, they reflect on you. If you grew up in a corrupt society, they reflect on you. And the second issue that is dominant now is the prism, orbit, and womb of capitalism. And in that orbit of capitalism, what the individual is looking for is a series of objects. It's a series of objects. Replacing one toy with another. Replacing Honda Civic with Tesla. These are toys, but not a series of insertions into communities. And it's necessary for me to create this preface, because Africans are also falling into this trap. African Americans are also falling into this trap of being self-made and without responsibility to the community and to other people. And that will now take me back to your question, that those two books, if they are read carefully, they are the making of individuals in community setting. And in that setting, you're a product of that community, and you transform yourself within the established paradigms of that community. So, and I can break it down, belief systems and the epistemologies underlining belief systems. And what those belief systems do is to accomplish what people do not talk about, cultural cognition. Cultural cognition. There's no brain that is neutral. When you call somebody a racist, it's a cultural cognition. That's the way his brain processes reality. Until you retool that brain. If you say there's no God, there are no witches, you are imposing your rationality on cultural cognition. What societies do is to form in you a set of ideas that become cultural cognition, that drive the way you interpret society, you interpret others, you interpret realities. If you say, I respect elders, that's a cultural cognition of eldership, an elder system. If you say, I love seeing masquerade, it's a belief that transforms itself into cultural cognition. So if you break the elements of those two memoirs down, you are going to find and elaborate belief systems that implanted in individuals cultural cognitions, embedding you in communities, defining your responsibilities, defining your concept of belonging, and ultimately, and this is going to be my last point so that you can ask me as many questions.
Yes, sir.
What holds society together? My society, traditional society, they're held together by two concepts, two fundamental concepts, guilt and shame. Guilt and shame. And until people understand that, they cannot understand Black communities, they cannot understand African communities. Guilt means you've done something that you yourself think is not right, and you imprison yourself, what Westerners call conscience. And that guilt will drive you towards seeking forgiveness, even if nobody catches you. Bear in mind, it's not about legality.
Yes.
It's not about taking somebody to court.
Yes.
And second, shame. Shame is, what do I do wrong and bad, unethical, to let other human beings not to want to have anything to do with me? Let me use a very terrible example, and you have to forgive me.
No, please.
It is not illegal to have sex with another person's wife. It's not an offense. But if you process guilt and shame, you won't do it. Shame means suppose you are caught. Right?
Yes. Yes.
The disgrace is so enormous.
Yes.
To the point of ostracization.
Yes.
But guilt means you are not caught. But you can't sleep. Because something is telling you that somebody already know. You see people talking, they figure it out. They're talking about me.
Yes.
And as we go into post-colonial Africa, you begin to see how that element of guilt and shame begin to disappear. And how we now begin to enter into serious fundamental issues of managing our societies.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Baba. We're going to pause here for a moment. And when we come back, we want to ask you to explore not only this question of what holds society together, but extend this conversation so your work is centered in having us ask these broader questions, and grounding them in the knowledge that African people have created since really the origin of humanity. So thank you. And we'll be back in a moment here at the Black Table to continue this conversation with Professor Toyin Falola, who I should have mentioned at the onset is at the University of Texas and has been there since 1991. He is currently the Jacob and Francis Sanger Massacre Chair and professor in the humanities and distinguished teaching professor at the University of Texas, Austin. But he's so much more than that. We'll be back in a moment here at the table.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Rolling all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Rolling was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back to the Black Table. We're here with Professor Toyin Falola. Baba, I think about something that you wrote in your chapter on African philosophies of history in, I think it's Spear's book on African historiography for Oxford University Press. And you said, Africanist historians have convincingly resolved the vexed question of whether Africa has a history or not. However, the question of whether an African philosophy of history exists has haunted successive generations of historians. And realizing that you, of course, came out of Ibadan, in a place that didn't exist much earlier than that in terms of the label that's put on the country we call Nigeria, and realizing that so many of your books are devoted to Nigeria and not just the history and memory and culture, but the politics. I'm wondering how, if you could share with our viewers your journey, which of course includes University of Ife. I always love saying Ife instead of Obafemi Awolowo, although I understand why it's renamed. But how much of your work grounded in restoring the momentum of our memory? And I think about Hampate Ba and so many others who have worked in this tradition. You know, could you help us understand how we can get at what, before the break, you describe it, not only what holds society together, but what African contributions to resolving that question look like, and how you started on this road that you continue to journey on.
Thank you. So, and I want to preface this question with tremendous gratitude to organic intellectuals. And by organic intellectuals, I mean those who do not make their living in universities, outside of the universities, but who've generated tremendous amount of knowledge that we have not paid sufficient recognition to. And I will start with the most preeminent intellectual of all colors in the last century, W.E.B. Du Bois, the most talented scholar of that century, no question. Whether you are black or white or Asian, is your top 1%.
Yes, sir.
The very notion of Africa that we use today does not hold to white people or Asian people or to Europeans, but to Du Bois. In a major book, The World and Africa, Africa and the World, where many of the intellectual ideas around Pan-Africanism, the creation of the Organization of African Unity, replaced by African Union, the rejection of the Washington, D.C. definition of Africa.
Yes.
Aligning North Africa with the Middle East. And that's how they teach in universities. That's how the desk is arranged in D.C.
Yes.
In which the code they use, Sub-Saharan Africa, Black Africa, is to take out North Africa, move it to Southern Europe, Remember, many of what Spain has claimed as his islands belong to Africa?
Yes.
And align it with the Middle East. So we hold it to them. We hold to Senghor the recognition of looking at civilization via other methodologies that are not instrumentalists. And we hold to a cluster of intellectuals, Marcus Garvey, Blyden, Johnson. What do we hold to them that forms the template of this conversation? I have labeled it the epistemology of self-assertion. Yes. The historiography of self-assertion. Blyden, Kenyatta, Senghor. Article turning culture, our food, our clothes, our languages, our skin color, into a constellation of ideas and philosophy that led to what we call cultural nationalism. And in that cultural nationalism lies a very foundation of many of our major intellectual thought. And when you now throw in Cheikh Anta Diop, yes, he moved beyond cultural nationalism to what I call the assertion of nationalism, assertive nationalism. Yes. In that assertive nationalism, convert Africa into your core belief system. Reject notions of inferiority, and you now combine those assertiveness and culture to produce combative nationalism. And that combative nationalism, you find it in all the civil rights movement. Black Lives Matter, because Black Lives Matter is about self-assertion, the assertion of blackness, which you now instrumentalize and weaponize, not only to produce knowledge, but to relate that knowledge to specific projects of overcoming domination, overcoming exploitation, overcoming insults, overcoming abuses. We cannot thank them enough. Yes. In fact, I've written proposals saying we must name a university after Du Bois. We must name a university after Marcus Garvey. I was very delighted when they changed the name of the University of Dakar to Cheikh Anta Diop University. Indeed. And that by itself is a recognition of our debts that we can never fully repay. We can never fully repay it. Yes. Even when we try, that debt is too big for us to fully repay. Well, Bob, I'm sorry. So that's my own starting point. And you make this point, Baba, over and over again in your written work and your teaching and your consultancies. While you do have an academic home and have had several, it isn't the place that you confine yourself to. I'm thinking about, even as we get into the next segment in a few minutes, the book, Decolonizing African Studies, when you talk about this question of the struggle to incorporate the uniqueness of African scholarship in global epistemology through pluriversality. But you are very, among so many other things, determined to bring all of those debts forward. And particularly when it comes to think about the archive, for example, I think in fact, in Counting the Tiger's Teeth, I think what you say, looking only to the archives and not to that community, the community of humanity, is like looking for a black goat in the dark. We have to bring the community forward. And when you talk about decoloniality, and you've mentioned Senghor, of course, and you mentioned Edward Wilmot Blyden, this text engages the full range
of our people, whether it be Oyewonke Oyewumi on gender, and you talk about LGBTQ issues and the challenges with lay before us, Walter Rodney, and so many others. I guess maybe the final question for this section, and then we'll come into the book itself. And you've already laid the foundation, obviously gesturing toward so many things you write about in the book, Black Lives Matter and other things as well. In addition to that, your practice, Baba, I mean, given your continued youth and strength, it is difficult to see how you maintain this pace. You write at the beginning of Decolonizing African Knowledge that you are always awake, you are working 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, and you're in constant conversation. How important is community even to your practice, your representative practice as a scholar, as a teacher? Is that partially what sustains you, in addition to, of course, the spirit, the great spirit that animates us all?
So if you accumulate everything I do, it's for public good.
Mm-hmm.
Where I pose the reality of my existence is, what do I hold you, not what do I hold myself. Now, if you work for other people, you don't get tired. You understand? You get tired if what you are doing is, I'm waiting for my salary at the end of the month so that I can go on vacation. You'll be tired. And you will always be tired.
Yes.
But I started these Toyin Falola interviews, which attracts millions of people. It's a lot of work. But I conceive it as working for the public. The follow-up to this book, this is, by the way, this is just volume 1 of 2 books of the same size.
Yes, sir.
Because the second volume of this, I call it Edible Studies. The concept of edible studies is, when you write an essay, when you teach, why don't you convert it, just as you convert your plantain into dodo and your rice into jollof rice? Why don't you convert it into what members of the audience can eat? You understand?
Yes.
And in that concept of edible studies, I laid out, it will be 700 pages long, how, if you do not pose a question, this my essay, this my classroom teaching, and I'm not using edible in terms of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using it in terms of how ideas becomes practice, and practice elevates us as a people, as a community, as a leader. I know we are running out of time for this segment, but I will end with a short anecdote.
Yes.
The tortoise, representing whiteness, post-Columbus colonization, said not only would they use other people's labor, they will impose their own methodology and epistemology on them, and their own culture and religion. And they began to collect their wisdoms. And they now said, having fully collected all the wisdom, they will now go and hide it on top of the largest tree and the longest. And they chose an Iroko tree. And they asked the tortoise, go and hide this knowledge on top of the tree. The tortoise put the knowledge in a big basket, put it on its back, and as it's trying to climb the tree, it keeps falling down. He will climb the tree with all the knowledge halfway, with the luggage in his front that is carried, it will fall down.
Yes.
And then he fell down again, and the snail came. And the snail said, tortoise, when you want to climb a tree with all this wisdom, there's a way you want to carry it so that you don't keep falling. As Snail said, you can hang it or you can put it on your back, or you can carry it on your head.
Yes.
And then you're able to climb the tree. And the tortoise, now representing the white person, became so angry that so it's not possible to carry all the wisdom of the world. Let me return this wisdom back. That is what you do. That is what I do. That our entire wisdom could not have been stolen. Our entire wisdom could not have been withdrawn. Our belief system, our epistemologies, all of them could not have been buried. What you and I do, and my listeners, is to do epistemological rescue operations. And now convert it to value, to create societies that would create its own autonomy and its own independence of thought and practice.
Thank you, Baba. This is a perfect segue as we enter our third segment to talk about this question of how we go about that practice in this massive volume that we know is now one of two. And now we know to anticipate being able to engage this in form of edible knowledge. So we'll come back in a moment with you, Professor Baba Toyin Falola, to discuss Decolonizing African Studies and how you go about this work of unlocking and sharing this knowledge with all of us and with ourselves. So we'll be back in a moment here at the Black Table.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure. When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back to the Black Table here on the Black Star Network. Remember to support the Black Star Network as we continue to grow and develop. Conversations like this, you're really not going to see anywhere else. So when we left, Baba, you were leading us in this conversation of how we share this knowledge and how we engage. And to think about that in terms of Decolonizing African Studies, of course, this massive tome, 3 parts, 20 chapters. Part 1, knowledge production. Part 2, agencies and voices. Part 3, the disciplines, where you really anchoring in this question of decoloniality and decolonizing knowledge. You take us across the range from literature and language to the question of feminism, aesthetics, history, methodologies, and something that, and it resonates as well in one of your subsequent books, as I mentioned a moment ago, this question of autoethnography, this question of having us be in conversation with ourselves, not anchoring our knowledges, our epistemologies in the colonial archive, but in the human and living traditions. I'm wondering if you could walk us through some of the conversations that led to this text and what you're trying to help us understand about ourselves as African people, but as human beings, in terms of where the sources of our knowledge are, how we know what we know, and how they probably aren't to be found in the libraries as such, although we don't ignore those archives. Could you help us understand?
Thank you. Your question is mixing 2 different books together.
Yes, it is.
There's another book that follows this, published by Cambridge University, Autoethnography and African Knowledge System.
Yes.
That autoethnography simply means myself. And the argument is that you, I, other people can be converted into an archive. In that long book of 500 pages, I converted myself into an archive.
Yes.
And I said, you don't have to go to London or France to understand Africa. You only have to understand me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I broke it down into pieces. What is the idea of the self? And I wrote, and there's a chapter in that book on textile. I'm wearing history. This is handmade. See this cap? We call this line flattax. When you see African hair, they are repetitive pattern. Anything you see something repetitive,
yes,
is a fractal.
Yes.
But in that repetitiveness, the beauty comes out. Mm-hmm. It's a knowledge system. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Mental fact in which your brain, the mentality that is locked that we do not see,
yes,
produce the artifact, the cap that we can see.
Yes.
And in this combination, it produces an aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
I do. Yes, yes.
So you embody yourself in knowledge. You understand?
Yes.
And as you produce words, the most powerful instrument, you are producing a constellation of knowledge. You understand?
I do. Well, Bobby, I remember even in the chapter after Cambridge,
now, if you now go to school,
yes,
and they begin to teach you, the way I will break it down, as in the book that you are using to organize this conversation.
Yes, sir.
Is the transition in knowledge over the years. 19th century self-assertion, confronting colonial epistemological damages, the violence.
Yes.
People like Garvey, Johnson, Du Bois, they are responding to that violence.
Yes.
To the half stories. And they were very successful. And then after the Second World War, 1950s and 60s, the need to do liberation movements. Nkrumah, Du Bois, liberationist knowledge, Padmore, MCCA, the African Nationalist Congress, BICO, Black Consciousness. All these were knowledge around Pan-Africanism, nationalist liberation. And as we began to face post-colonial challenges, civil rights movement, we began to talk about dependency theory. How Europe underdeveloped Africa is 50 years old this year.
Yes.
And we are celebrating it. I've contributed to an essay to celebrate that book. And as we became disappointed in the 70s and 80s, we began to talk about Marxism.
Yes.
Ethiopia, Nyerere,
yes.
And then post-apartheid Africa, emphasis on African knowledge system, African Renaissance. I Am an African by Mbeki.
Yes.
And then as the disappointment began to come into South Africa, we began to talk about roads must fall.
Yes.
Roads must fall began to organize us. And then today, we have George Floyd, the Black Lives Matters, and the re-emergence of radical Black thought.
Ah, interesting.
Universities are responding to that now.
Yes.
This is now hiring Black intellectuals, making some of them deans here, deans there. There's going to be a backlash in the years ahead. But you will see the genealogies of all these ideas. And if there is time, I will accumulate for you what a newer generation has done differently from my own generation.
So you do see a difference between this new generation,
yes.
Something qualitative, a qualitative difference.
Both of them, and you see it in the Black Panther movie. And the forthcoming one, Wakanda.
Yes.
These are intellectual projects.
Interesting.
You understand?
I do.
Well, the Black Panther and Wakanda that is forthcoming, they are the Jujurization of intellectual thought. Black Panther is basically juju, you understand?
It's juju. Now, see, this is going to be hard for some people, Baba, because you mentioned juju. I mean, I'm thinking about even in the second book, Decolonizing African Knowledge, that chapter you do on Yoruba hair art and the agency of women. We have been trained, as you write so often, to look to the academics for the cultural messaging, when in fact it is the people that are creating. So people are very critical of Black Panther, of Wakanda, but you're helping us understand that spirit, that hope, which you say in another writing, is not a scientific concept. That's really the source. When you say juju, you're gonna scare some people today, Bob, I'm afraid.
Is it juju?
The spirit, though, I mean, and that's not to be found in the university, huh? It's our people.
Yeah.
So then, okay, you know what? I knew this hour was going to go quickly, but I know we have about a minute left in this segment. I'm hoping that perhaps in this moment, and then we'll spend the rest of our time together, really exploring what you're raising here. I'm hoping you can help us understand how these communities that are the sources of our epistemology, of our knowledge, really, how even when we try to explore it in terms of the academy, our challenge remains that we are presented with, and I think you write it somewhere, that modernity has been defined for it and presented to it in a fragmented manner. How do we bust through that? I'm thinking this is something that one of your colleagues, Sabalo Dunlovu Gasheni, in Epistemic Freedom in Africa, quotes you on that. We face this. How do our students push past that when they try to bring themselves into the classrooms and it's fragmented? Please go ahead, Baba.
So I'm proud of these young people. I'm really, really very proud of them because they've done what you and I have not been able to do. In three dominant arenas. They are preeminently successful, far more than your generation and my generation. The capacity to create original stories that led to the creation of the second largest movie industry in the world, Nollywood.
Yes.
It does not hold to you or I.
No.
The creation of music that is so global, unprecedented. Simi, Davido, all this, the two biggest music in the last 2 years came from Africa. Jerusalem.
Yes.
And Bugalolo. I hope you've listened to Bugalolo.
Yes. Yes. These young people are incredible and they're connecting with each other, Bob. It's so inspirational. Yes.
Bugalolo is bigger than what Pan-African, what Du Bois can ever imagine.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And Jerusalem is bigger than what Marcus Garvey could have ever imagined.
Absolutely.
Bugalolo last May was the #1 anywhere in the world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, and they've been able to transform fashion. You understand?
Absolutely.
And they're now transforming restaurants. To eat, there is a restaurant in New York very popular now, $75 to eat Yoruba food.
What? Did you ever think you would see the day, Baba?
In a classy restaurant. You understand? So, and arising from those practices, they've been able to generate new theoretical platforms. You can bring me back again to talk about them. Afropolitanism and Afrofuturism. You understand?
Yes.
It is not you or I who generated it. And I presented a paper 3 weeks or so ago saying that this Afrofuturism, this Afropolitanism, do not think they are not connected with Pan-Africanism, because they are. And I did the connection. This is going to be my last sentence for this segment.
Yes,
and I did the connection that do not disconnect them. Do not disconnect Black Panther from Marcus Garvey. The Power of Africa, the Back to Africa movement.
Yes.
Because if you disconnect them, you cannot track the lineages of theories and liberationist ideas.
This is so critical. In fact, I'm not going to say anything right now. I'm going to ask us to pause for a moment, and when we come back, we want to explore this very essential moment of not disconnecting, continuing to connect and strengthen those connections. So thank you, Baba. We'll be back in a moment with Professor Toyin Falola, Dr. Falola from the University of Texas, Austin, and really the world. We'll be back in a moment at the Black Table.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
These are the only bins that will accommodate larger overboard.
They put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you poop him.
Oh my God.
So what?
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back to the Black Table here on the Black Star Network. I'm Greg Carr, joined today by Professor Toyin Falola from the University of Texas and really global. We're so glad, Baba, that you said we can invite you back, because we certainly are. We don't want to prevail upon your time. You're constantly working and moving. When we paused, you were talking about not disconnecting, particularly the movement of these young people that have really taken the world and really kind of strengthen these connections, but connecting them to this long arc, this lineage you mentioned. I think about the Ethiopian filmmaker Haile Gerima, who talks about the fact that people cannot be colonized, cannot be the victims of imperialism if they have this continuity. And so a lot of your work that we use, I'm looking at key events in African history that you did. One of your more recent co-written books, the United States and Africa Relations from Yale University Press. You know, we use your work in the classroom to help particularly young people who have these unbroken cultural continuities develop an awareness of historical memory and knowledge. How important is that to strengthen the continuities that you've been talking about today, about knowing the history, having that memory restored?
Very good. So we have been people on the move, Bantu migration from Cameroon to Southern Africa.
Mm-hmm.
The Yoruba say that a human being is like the water in the sea. It keeps moving. And as we keep moving, we have waves and waves of Africans in Africa and outside of Africa. Your colleague many years ago created this beautiful map of the African diaspora.
Joseph Harris, yes.
Yes. Yes. Waves in the Indian Ocean. This is an impressive map.
Yes.
Our waves across the Atlantic, enslaved. So we have the enslaved. Could have been the largest dominant population in the United States. The reason why that is not so is not the subject for today. But they created an African American identity with so many ideas around the diaspora. Then some waves came when Africa was under European powers. They went to historically black colleges.
Mm-hmm.
They produced Kwame Nkrumahs. Barack Obama's father came during that time, produced the first black president.
Yes.
The economist from Jamaica, the father of your current vice president.
Yes.
Harris, that's another wave.
Yes.
And my own wave from the 80s, each of these waves is producing solid intellectual thoughts. We lump these intellectual thoughts together, fine, but we can also connect them. The current generation producing Wakanda, Black Panther, cosmopolitanism, Afrofuturism, Afropolitanism. These were hybrid. Your children, my children, children of immigrants who have never been to Africa or who know about Africa.
It's true.
They are producing enormous ideas. And my own speculation today is that in 20, 30 years, it is this generation that will be winning the Nobel Prize. Say, France won the World Cup and claimed the World Cup, but 9 of the 11 players are black.
Yes.
You combine all if you racialize the medals in the Olympics.
Yes. Oh, of course.
Instead of calling them US.
That's right.
France.
Yes.
The largest winners of the medal are black.
That's right. That's right. Well, Robert, I don't want to interrupt you, but I know we're coming up against the clock, but I do want to, hopefully we can squeeze in a question, because much of your writing, you don't shy away from the politics, the existential crises we're facing, whether it be global warming, the political crises we're facing in terms of world hunger and the real tragedy of how this world system has oppressed so many people. How do we manage that? So many of your books, for example, are focused not only on the history of Nigeria, the history of the groups and the nations that make up Nigeria, but on Nigerian politics. What are the political implications of this movement?
Very good. So the theory in Western academy is that Africa is irrelevant, Africa is marginal.
Absolutely.
But Africa is at the very center of their politics. You cannot understand the rise of Trump without foreigners. You cannot understand the rise of Trump without immigrants. People like me.
Yes.
And people from Mexico are major factor in understanding American politics. You cannot understand Brexit without understanding Peckham and Liverpool and Asians in America, in Britain. Yes. So on the one hand, you say we're marginal, but on the other hand, we centralize ourselves in your politics. Right?
Yes.
So that cannot be marginal. The main concern in Europe, other than when Ukraine started, is about me and you.
Right.
Mediterranean.
Yes.
That's the center of politics in France. That's the center of politics in Spain.
Yes.
So it is how you and I have to frame Africa.
And by Africa, you're not just talking about Africa, you're talking about the world, the African world.
Yes. Is that we are not doing the framing appropriately. You understand?
Yes, sir.
We are not framing it as, for instance, I'm a philanthropic donation to the United States from Nigeria.
Indeed, you are, Bob.
You understand? We're not talking about Africa technical support to the United States.
No.
You understand?
Of course.
Half of the doctors produced under Rawlings work in America. So
J.J. Rollins in Ghana. You talking about the Ghanaians?
Yes. Poor Ghana is doing a major technical support to the American medical system.
I think people don't understand that, Baba. I mean, again, please forgive me. I know we run out of time, and I hope you will come back so we can continue this conversation. We've been really enriched by this. We're a little over, but I hope you could give us a few seconds on your work with the Toyin Falola Center. I know that you've had conversations with leaders, and just so people can look for themselves. And again, go to toyinfalolanetwork.org so you all can kind of.
Well, I run 3 initiatives. The center looks for money for poor people. It's a redistributive approach. I collect money from a rich person like you, and I give it to a poor person who looks like you.
Yes. Yes, sir.
And then I do the Toyin Falola interviews, bring in major voices. The last one we did was with Mbeki.
Yes, I saw.
And I established a consortium, bringing together over 20 university presses to create the Pan-African University Press, with a focus on our colleagues in Africa, how we can put their ideas on the table.
Yes.
Because we've always had this idea.
Yes.
Whenever I have 2 minutes left, let me know so that I can make my closing statement.
Well, I think we've gone over, Baba. So if you don't mind, with your indulgence, please forgive me. We can have it now, please. At least for now. We will invite you back, please, Baba.
So, in facing Mount Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta created a very brilliant anecdote. And he said this anecdote in the forest. And he started by saying, the animals, they wanted to imitate human beings, and they don't want the rain to beat them. They don't want the sun to pound them. And they said, why couldn't they build houses and live like human beings? Instead of, they've been using trees and caves. And Fox built a house, and he did a housewarming party. And the animals were invited. And the tiger loved this house, and he drove away the fox from it. The family of the cat. He built another one, and tiger drove him out of it. And then he built the biggest one and invited all the animals. Unknown to them, he devised a system to set fire on the house. And as they wanted to take away the house from him and they were rejoicing, Fox burned down the house. And burned down all the animals. With the anecdote saying that if you don't do justice, don't expect peace. If you don't do equality, don't expect peace. So our writings, programs like this, are not just talking about epistemological ideas.
Yes.
As you pose your question, you are talking about epistemological liberation.
Yes.
Which will lead us into where we started from by our organic intellectuals, self-assertion and autonomy to create freedom and uplift ourselves as Black people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Modupwe. I hope I said it right, Baba. Thank you so much. If we were physically in person, it would be an honor to sit at your feet, and we have done that today. We honor you. You honor us with your presence, and we hope you will come back soon to join us in conversation. And may the road be clear, and may you always have a blessing and cool water as we continue forward in this journey we call life, Baba. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. So we'll be back in a moment to clear the table. Thank you. Thank you.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back to the Black Table here on the Black Star Network. Remember to support the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Greg Carr. And we spent today's session with one of the most remarkable human beings that we share the planet with, Professor Toyin Falola from the University of Texas, Austin, but more importantly, one of the really leading lights in the world. And he reminded us of what we should focus on to hold society together. And he reminded us to always think, what can I do for you? And that is the source of our life, of our energy. So we want to close with his words. This is actually from his book, The Humanities in Africa, from 2016. And Professor Falola says, the final intellectual products of African scholars, even when they combine localism with globalism, will be a distinguishable autonomous hybrid that is African in its imprimatur. Thus, we become the center of knowledge, not its periphery. We originate as well as adopt and adapt, and in the end, we will invent as well as renew. We create an African universalism in the context of multiple universalisms. Toyin Falola has modeled for us the best in human efforts to create a better world, a better society for ourselves. And as the Yoruba people, his people might say, we're on earth to work on our character, Iwa. And he is a true Omoluabi, a man who is about community. So thank you. We will see you next week at the Black Table. In the interim, stay safe, continue to learn, and support the Black Star Network. We'll see you soon.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay Black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?